月节早了都。宁别顿都别别那就怕龙前绕这么小啦，索罗哇得别日东江不来许呢，起拉嘞，光别龙呢不别得接住。龙多缺嘴叫做我望住了，没旁江阳南家啦，索罗哇得别。我们确实应该破张呢，都是上街关键我你。让心求个龙松蹲在把在为那面下了说完的，这样做完那么给他当年被心间他们这东阿的军队，你当找的托家拉那没把杨当把的做被上街的国防人保起来过把的给我，第一次都单比去天年申请处理行动，严肃让我的给我，年被三把长久长度突击把人保起。살다 베고네 셈바르슈 강 셈바르 차위 추게 림바네 케베 출라 주비고 셰차위 텐조 테니 임바레 딜라 양 케바르 차위네 주 추게 dom시 소소 양답베 리바시 고네 여발레 당보 케바르 차위네 주 디캅라인 딜라 양 풍보 감 게체 덴들 네다 니민 왕보 듀스 슈신네 덴바이 캅라인 ini demba de la yang ini demba shiru chang nebe tang ini demba shi rere gi ewa tang tinde chini de rere kola tinde shegi yoba le tinde dungal gi demba de shu sine nipa kunjung gi dembe kabla hin.
At the beginning of class, please give rise to bodhicitta, thinking, may all sentient beings, who are as numerous as the sky is vast, attain a state that is free from suffering and the causes for suffering. May I be able to establish all those sentient beings at a level of perfect and complete awakening, the state of a perfect Buddha. And in order to do so, may I now study and then put the teachings correctly into practice. With that kind of motivation, please listen to the teachings. The text that we're studying in this class is The Gateway to Knowledge, the treatise entitled The Gate for Entering the Way of a Pandita by Jamgon Mipam Rinpoche. And the text is divided into 3 main sections. The first one is concerned with the 10 topics of expertise, the second with the 4 seals of Dharma, and the third one with the 4 right discriminations. We're currently discussing the first one of those, the 10 topics of expertise, and we have already covered the aggregates, the elements, the sense sources, interdependence, the correct and the incorrect, the faculties, and time. And we have reached the topic of the truth. The topic of the truths is explained first in terms of the number of the truths as well as their order, and then specific classifications and discussions of each of the 4 noble truths. Out of those, we have covered the truth of suffering already and are currently discussing the truth of origin.
Demba shila tanda change bade langdur do chawi chane demba shidu change de sumaro da shunang la langja lamgi demba tang gobi demba dini do dubi chane lamgi demba do gobi demba tens ane dorja pangja de dungalgi demba tang kunjunggi demba ni imbe tene dini do dune tens eta langdur do chawi chane demba shidu change ba yin.
So we speak about 4 noble truths here, and the way that this is described in the text is that actually the number 4 truths is coming from the distinction into the 2 truths that are to be adopted and those 2 truths that are to be abandoned. So the discussion of what needs to be adopted or taken up is the discussion of the truth of the path and the truth of cessation, while the discussion of suffering and the discussion of the truth of suffering and the discussion of the truth of origination or origin is summarized by everything that needs to be abandoned or refrained from. So In that way, we have the distinction into the two truths that need to be adopted and two truths that need to be abandoned, summarizing all the topics of these two categories into the four truths.
네, 동알기 덴바델라 누주니스 가상 친역이 직된 사호 아니 살라 사땡스 되는 숨레바레 아니 주기 섬진델라 도와르둑 암 양나 하민데 체가 돼 둔드 나라두 체가 되데 하이 나라두 송나 도와 나스 어딘데스네 친역이 제대로 남주기 섬진 슈세네스 다 니바 군중기 덴바스 군중델라 양 레당 녀몽바 니기고네 용아레스 되네 레델라 되네 가상 베자샤나 게위레 미기위레 루마땡기레 양 사제기레 다양 사미기레 라이도 양 통조 용규를 깨니 용규를 렌단 셴라 용고와 양 용와를 망해봐 라야라소 때 레기 남도 망보치네 다 군중을 갑라시버네 단당아서 다 니바 다 말에 다 레당 군중니 베는데 군중기 갑라 렙데요스 레당 녀몽반니 베는 녀몽비 갑라 렙데요스.
So when we were discussing the truth of suffering as the first of the Four Noble Truths, the discussion evolved around two topics. The discussion of the outer world, the vessel, and the inner content, sentient beings. So we looked at the entire presentation of the world in terms of the realms below the surface of the earth, on the surface, and above the earth, for example. So we looked at the world, the vessel. And then we also looked at sentient beings, the different enumerations of sentient beings, as we look at them in terms of the 6 classes of beings, or 5 if we exclude the demigods as an own class, but put them into the two, or count them as animals and gods respectively. So then we have the 5 classes of beings. So that was how we looked at the truth of suffering in terms of the vessel, the world, and the content, sentient beings. And then the second truth, the truth of origin, also has 2 parts. The first one is karma, it's actions. So there we looked at all sorts of different classifications of karma already. We looked at virtuous, non-virtuous, and neutral karma, or we looked at defiling and undefiling karma, undefiling actions. Then we looked at that which needs to be experienced straight away, or that the kind of karma, the kind of karmic actions that need to be experienced in the future, in future lifetimes, or karmic actions that are not certain whether they will be lead to an according experience. So we looked at many different classifications and particularities within the topic of karma, karmic actions. And after that discussion, we now moved on to the second part of the truth of origination, which is then afflictive emotions.
The 녀몽바 되게 명락가가 차제스네. 근데서 차우 녀몽바에서 충중 차우네 가래 녀몽바 체로 제체로도 얘기해배나 차제스. 근데 수마리다 녀몽바 갑텔라 녀몽바 차제스 녀몽바의 명기 남당당 녀몽바 얘기 유당 녀몽바의 예출 디레다 녀몽바 얘기 규대 수수줄라 녀몽바 요바당 녀몽바 계사기 율대 요바당 아니 이제 로데기 율데라 친주록도 짐바당 nyumongba kyo chitini nyumongba de yetsul de la mikbe gone jewa tang chungding ge gone jebas odinde sine dinde ge nam sha den zo mangbo chita shu sine dine tanda kapto de la ta nyumongba den zo xinyang nyumongba ge ta namjang rawa dinde yes di none tanda kunji ke sine kunji ke di lepsung ke kawadul
Shit. Dann also die
nyomongba de la yang namdang mangbo shegi do wa
Nima tuk tasung tasung
kunji ke chuo shi sirwa de la so ba ge ta tinde mangbo yu ban ne de kunji ke nes nas
So in the discussion of the afflictive emotions, then we looked at the definition of the afflictive emotions and also the fact that they're sometimes called subtle developers, and that describes a function of these afflictive emotions clearly, that actually these afflictive emotions, they might be very small in the beginning, but then they grow and grow and grow. So in the beginning, they're subtle, they're very, very subtle and hard to detect. And then they will develop, they will grow and become more coarse. So that's why we call them also subtle developers. It's a synonym for afflictive emotions. And we looked at the different ways to describe what the causes for afflictive emotions are and how they actually develop. So what are the causes for these subtle afflictive emotions to arise or to then develop? And how does that work? We said that the afflictive emotions depend on three things. First, that the tendencies for the afflictive emotions are not abandoned, so that there are afflictive emotions in the mind stream of a being that can then develop. Then there must be an object towards which the afflictive emotions will be directed. So an object for those afflictive emotions, and then the fact that the way of grasping to the objects by the conceptual mind of the sentient being needs to be mistaken. So we said that these three causes, the tendencies for the afflictive emotions, the object, and the mistaken grasping of the intellectual mind or conceptual mind. And then the afflictive emotions, with these causes being present, then the afflictive emotions will develop either based on focus or on co-occurrence. So in that way, we already looked at many different aspects of how these subtle developers or these afflictive emotions develop, increase. And now we have reached a section where we actually speak about a number of different classifications, a number of different enumerations of disturbing emotions, afflictive emotions. So there are 13 classifications, like the 9 bonds, the 5 bonds, and so forth. And we have reached the 7th one of those, which are the 8 fetters. So we are actually on page 129, paragraph 1062, the 8 fetters.
네. 다 되네 말라도 녀몽바 된속이 다 제레 이고네 되네 명자 메르마보 따샤와 인주조데 다 자위 녀몽당 아니 녀위 녀몽 된조랑 레스 아니 가상 야 강랑 아주 녀몽보다 간데스 얘기를 해서는 믹바당 총딩 기분이 얘기를 해서 믹바스디가라 넘버 쉐비 풍보데라 셈데라 나오 삼네 되네 풍보셴 sugi pungbo chorwa dang duje denzo la ngayirs dang dagirs tane yedo hongwa denzo la chakwa dang yedo meongwa denzo la shedang dang parma la dang nyum dang dine te la soba ge chado ngajal techum la soba ge dinde gi kone dine tawa dang dinde gi kone nyumongba de yege res ta dine sen ge dang dinde res songre tan 아니 대시야 녀몽 도차다 된조 냠도 셰당 냠도 양 셰당당 도차된조 냠도 계기 매와 라소바데 녀몽 수도 수 냠도 인매다 되게 콜라케자 조사래 미바다 총된스러와 어딘데스니다 조사니 단단이다 다 녀몽 된소기 양 레가 지당 자출기 군이다 녀몽의 명 배샤샤나 다 드링 디니 말라 군지 계승지여스 담 목바당 지 니당 니 고바당 숨 요바 나시 차도 나 세르나 주 노참메바 듄첼 메바 게스 다디 개보텔라 양 제레기 보니야 디 딜라 디 개보텔라 양 군디 게스 나주르바 남기 아니 개와체비가라 바르제체지 아니 양양 아니 균도 중용계레스 대개보들이 군대계대 된조인스는 송하래도
So here in the presentation of the 13 classifications of the disturbing emotions, what we see is actually that we're discussing the disturbing emotions based on their different functions under different names. There are different enumerations of those afflictive emotions, and they're named in different ways based on the different functions that they portray. So basically, though, these refer to the root and subsidiary afflictive emotions. Basically, this is what we're discussing here, just looking at the different functions of the root and disturbing and subsidiary afflictive emotions. And so when we looked at how we can describe the afflictive emotions previously, we looked at focus and co-occurrence. So how do they arise? Based on what do the afflictive emotions arise? And then also we looked at the which of the afflictive emotions can actually arise together, which come along together, which co-occur with each other. So we looked at all these different classifications of what arises together with what doesn't arise with what afflictive emotion. And basically, it's like the arising of or the development of the afflictive emotions is based on the grasping to an I. So holding on to one's experience as the I then leads to an identification of the 5 aggregates with the mine. So that then this is my body, my perception, and so on, my feeling or sensations. And so based on that, then the grasp, one is attached to the experience, and afflictive emotions do arise. So depending on whether an object is experienced as pleasurable or painful or neutral, then afflictive emotions arise. So attachment, aversion, or ignorance arise subsequently. And then also the other afflictive emotions like arrogance, doubt, belief, and so forth. And we have seen what arises together with what, based on what kind of object. And so we have seen, for example, how does anger arise, based on what, together with what kind of experience does anger arise, and so on. So those kinds of discussions we have completed. So how do these afflictive emotions develop further? And now we shift to another discussion, or we have shifted to another discussion of the different functions that these afflictive emotions actually perform. And then we have these different classifications based on that. We have reached the 8 fetters now. And the 8 fetters are the following. The 8 fetters are sluggishness, number 1, sleep, number 2, excitement, number 3, regret, number 4, envy, number 5, stinginess, number 6, shamelessness, number 7, and lack of consciousness is number 8. They are named so because they repeatedly fetter one's mind at the time of resting in shamatha and equanimity. So here we look at these afflictions in terms of how they are fetters for the practitioner. When someone is trying to practice, then the function of these 8 afflictive emotions, labeled as the 8 fetters here, is then that they create obstacles to the accumulation of virtue, to the practice of virtue of the practitioner. So, and because they create these obstacles and then subsequently continuously arise in the mind stream and create further obstacles, they're called the fetters that bind the practitioner at the time of practice.
Tidaki shine tang tangyum ki tu na yang semla tiwara chebe na ane tige do sun sos tati kebu tiki ane zo chewa shine kumbi kabla mukba tang ni ke sem nang la tibi chagi kone parche chewa tang ane sem chiro la yengwa de goba tang gyoba Dini digi lakdong la parche chiwa tang, dini chadok tang serna digi, ani sem tang nyumsu newa la pardu chiwa tang, shenyang dini ji chang ji digba la zem gewa sung ho dinde chiwa la, ani ngocha meba da tel meba nigi parche chiwi konis. Similar tiwar chebes na pena thakpa la kola tinzo tisha thakpa la pena kuba pena kyupa la pena kola tisha wa nanshe pena kyupa la thakpa tiwa nanshe chini nga zungza semla di kebo digi tiwar chewas o tiraw chini dine ti ji thapa ki lula tamshana lu ji hlöbo yongi marwa di nangshingi di nyomongba gebo degi semla jishana tamshana sem shine dang lakdong dang dangyom dang dindigan hlöbo yongi mares da jishagi yores odi chini dege do sunso
Dangboshi de tsoho shinela bachi chigere lakdong daji.
다소 야 당보 니기 시내 니바 니기 학통 아니 숨바 니기 당념 아니 심마든지 개와다 디바
So It says here, they are named so because they repeatedly fetter one's mind at the time of resting in shamatha and equanimity. So when we look at these 8 fetters, they really prevent the mind from engaging in virtuous practice, in the practice of shamatha and vipassana. And so when we look at sluggishness and sleep, the first two, they're really primarily obstacles to the practice of shamatha. Excitement and regret can be seen as primarily obstacles for vipassana meditation. And then the remaining ones, or especially envy and stinginess, are, but also shamelessness and lack of consciousness, create obstacles to resting in equanimity, and specifically shamelessness and lack of conscience. They prevent the refraining from negative actions, from any kind of negativity, and the practice of virtue instead. So in this way, just generally, these 8 fetters, they are like a fetter, like a rope or a chain that binds one. So they are, these afflictive emotions bind the mind and do not allow the mind to develop the qualities of the practice. So the way we can think about this is like when we have a rope, and the rope, the body is bound by a rope, then it can't just rest comfortably. It's bound up, right? So in the same way, if the mind is bound by these 8 fetters, then it cannot rest in the meditative absorption. It cannot rest in the practice of shamatha, or it cannot develop vipassana, and so on.
Yang chuo shi nis nyomong ba tenzo mingla yang chuo shi sene la be ju sungare mingi namdang debi chuo deba tsolwa la shuba debi nyomong ba tangs chuo shi de la tangbo de debi chuo la de ins dokham ge tanda docha shedang timo nga ja la so pa nyomong ba tenzo mingla debi chuos debi nyomong ba tangs sibi chuos na kam kong mi nyomong ba tenzo kam kong ma la ani shine dang ladong dang kam kong me rangsa la chapa dang tene mongba la so pa tende chungwa yi maripa la so tin chungwa tenzo la sibi chuo tangs tawi chuos 당보 de dobi chu re niba de sibi chu singre sumba de tawi chu na jigda tharda lokda churim tuju chosen tawa chosen la so tawa nga wo khamsum gi tawa nga wo tinzo mingla tawi chu khamsum gi simjing yula yube mariba de gi mingla maribi chu de shin 추 신도 아니 추 첨부 랩소나 행동당 아니 잘락당 뭐보든서 가사갈라 추기 캐르족이라 추 첨부 랩나 베티나 신기 나랑 저기 감숨기 심정기 셈 대초 감숨 가사갈라 코르발라 야양 코르도 죽네 캐르족이 베나 디시오디기 명라 양 추오스
So then we have yet another presentation here, another classification, which is that of the 4 rivers. The four rivers are: the river of desire means involvement in seeking out the desire realms or the disturbing emotion of desire. The river of existence refers to the disturbing emotions of the upper realms, the river of beliefs, and the river of ignorance. So here now this classification is called the four rivers, and this classifies all the afflictive emotions in terms of these four types of rivers. First, the river of desire actually refers to the afflictive emotions of the desire realm, like the attachment of the desire realm, the anger of the desire realm, arrogance of the desire realm, doubt of the desire realm, and so on. And then the river of the second river, the river of existence, refers then to the afflictive emotions of the two higher realms, of the form and formless realm. And so that refers to the attachment to particular practice or experience of those realms, or to the realms themselves, and the delusion of those realms. Then we have the river of beliefs that refers to the five beliefs in all three realms. So there we talk about the belief in the transitory collections, the extreme beliefs, the perverted beliefs, holding a belief to be paramount, or holding discipline or ritual to be paramount. Those are the all included in the river of beliefs. And then the river of ignorance refers to the ignorance present in the mind streams of beings of the three realms, so the desire, form, and formless realms. And so the image that is given here is that of rivers. These are what carry away everything. When we have a very big river, then the river will carry with it everything that comes into its way. So all sorts of belongings might be carried away, as well as entire trees and all harvests and everything. So a big river, when it swells up, might carry with it everything. And in the same way, these rivers, the river of desire, the river of existence, the river of belief, and the river of ignorance, they also carry with them all that we might accumulate, that all the experience of of positive results and so on. So they might, when they swell up, then they carry away for worldly pleasure and so on.
대신도 대실라 되비 조르와스 조르와 속실 되비 조르와 시비 조르와 따위 조르와 마르비 조르와스 데 조르와스는 명양 잘네요 조르와 시스나양 조도스 조르와스는 디시부데 여송나 빵자 아니 녀몽바된조 빵 미투바당 마세비기 아니 감숨게 동알델라 조르와라 제베이나 아니 양 대시부되게 명라 조르와 시양 드네스는 시초도.
Similarly, these four are also called the four binds, including the bind of desire and so forth. So these four categories, the river of desire, the river of existence, the river of beliefs, and the river of ignorance, are also called the four binds: the bind of desire, the bind of existence, the bind of beliefs, and the bind of ignorance, because they are what make us not able to abandon that which needs to be abandoned. they don't let us refrain or abandon the afflictive emotions. And so that is what then binds us to samsara.
Yang nyomungba tenzogi mingla kaka nyawar lemba shide yes. Nyawar lemba shide debi nyawar lemba tang chik te shendo tawi nyawar lemba tang ni sulim tulshuge nyawar lemba tang sum tang mawa nyawar lemba tang shid. Di shide yang di shivu digi 아니 감숨게 semjen tenzo tini sipa la shemba chakwe kone chi yang korwa de la kewa lembar chebe na di shi di mingla nyawar lembas dindas lavare sungare ta dubi nyawar lembas ne chikwa draure dubi yonden tenzo larwa sugda tiro re dokam ki doyen nga tenzo larwa dubi yonden tenzo la tene chapa nyawar lemba tenzo la dubi nyawar lembas deshindo tawe nyawar lembas na ane tawa drameda takche ki tawa tang ani tawa drameda takche ji takche ki tawa tang sirwa chotamje yobaos mebaos chotamje zangmaos mizangwa la zangma midakpa la takpa tawa rwa mibala odi laso zangde takta ki tawa naso di tenzo mingla tawa nyawar lembas sulim dushu labna ji yang takpi lam maim pala yang takpi lam imba nyedo ani tanda chirulbagi tanda tulshu yorwa menga tembatang laso ba katuki tulshu tenzo res tatu mawa nyawar lembas ne tini tak singi yes nga singi yo tangshu yore seme tindegi tawa shukchumbo kirwa de ani ta ngobe nesu yuwangdo ta meba la ta yu sambe gune tinde mawa de ta do mawe nyawar lemba shins shi des.
And then we have the 4 perpetuations. The 4 perpetuations are the perpetuation of desire, the perpetuation of unwholesome beliefs, the perpetuation of discipline and rituals, and the perpetuation of the doctrine of self-entity. And so the function of these 4 perpetuations is that they perpetuate rebirth within samsara again and again based on the attachment to existence within the samsara. So it describes the perpetuation of the experience of the 3 realms of the sentient beings in the 3 realms. And the first one of those is then the perpetuation of desire. That describes the desire for the 5 sense pleasures. So the perpetuation of the experience of samsara based on the attachment to experiences, sense pleasures. The second one is the perpetuation of unwholesome beliefs, and that refers then to all sorts of unwholesome beliefs with regard to how things are. So here we describe the eternalistic and nihilistic views, or those 2 views fall into that category. Like views of believing in true existence of phenomena, or nihilistic views of their absolute non-existence. Also believing in things to be pure or clean while they're impure, and holding on to things as being permanent while they're impermanent. Those kinds of views here are the perpetuation of unwholesome beliefs that lead to continuation of rebirth within samsara. Then the perpetuation of discipline and rituals is the holding on to a path, a type of practice or a practice system which is not the authentic path as being the authentic. And so therefore, by holding onto such a discipline or ritual as the paramount, not engaging in that which would actually lead to liberation. So that also binds one to samsara. And then the perpetuation of the doctrine of self-entity is referring to this grasping to a self, of person, to the self, to the I. So any kind of strong belief in the existence of a self which is not in accord with how things truly are, with what reality really is, then refers to the perpetuation of the doctrine of self-entity.
Dishignane Tangbenis Debala Sakpar Shenne Shembi Gus Dubi Yunden Denzolaro Sutra Tiro Richa Yidongwa Nobo Denzola Lapar du Shembi Yugi Kimba Nam Super Cheching Siba never lemba was Kimba Nam Dingai Sashingins Dingai Nobo Chalains Tindetang Ani 총당 다 지딩게 내가 망보지여와 지 dübi 연된라 되는다 셈차비 권이더니 신뢰당 총 라소바기다 저바 망보정게라 어디 저바 제징센더니 딜라 때네 녀몽보 망보지 사비 권이 시바 녀월렘바 오스 시발라 탁바르도 개발된 거고요레스 안틴데레스 송아리 녀월렌당데 당보디 니바데 테 따와 생데라와 따와라 셴네 rabjung namla zoba sopsos tawala shen sidigala ta tuntala shuba tenzo namrawa tawala shen ne tene tawade mega in ledo tawade main gagre ledo ani tawa chodu jurwani phagi tawade norware di tawade yakore laila sobage di tawa korla kecha mangboji dumdala zoba mangboji shungere de gune chagmang mangbo phelne yang sibala kewa lengures lembawos ta sumba de chulim tushusana lokbi chulim dang tulshuk ta debe modik jendang nang pinchen zobawos modik ba lokbi chulim se kare subula 하정기 깔래카고 때네 빼샤샤나 나좀 미미 롱동라 조디 갑텔라 다 리니 밥샤교 추된조 사동바 기다 강니마나 밥샤교 추된조 메기 마테나 나좀 통예요 말레스 디 통소나 나좀 구마니도 차게레 마진발레 마 차게레 람니 다 수불라 빼 깔래제 메기 마테나 리롱동바나 예비 추양 미통킨 라와 데니 딘데게 카토비오레 치루발라 셴양 데니 촉시니 메파르 남킨 니마다 지니 맹아 템발라소 바당 데니 키다우 지니 드로데와 발랑당신 지니 강락시 중니 드로데와 데니 딜라소바게 툴슈프세라 키다 발랑게 툴슈라 타도베 딘데 망고 예베나데 무디바 낭핀준 조바디 야코레 나초 제 카토데 야고레 공조데 야고 말에 라라소 바냥 무딩 낭 핀준제 쪼바 주사레도와 디 쪼바 쪼나양 야 셈라양 제 녀몽바 펠고니 양시발레 녀발랭 고교레스 소라데티네 시바데 따윈네세 제 직달라 차네다 다학생인데 열에 스네 라용데 갑라테니 우마파게다 다학생인데 ngo빈네 술라만나 땅나 다요 마레스네 딘데 숭용데 갑라타 체르모딕 바탕 데네 tum타 오마탕 되니 지딩 컴라 좀다 다 메라 망보기 낭편준 쩌바 망보지 쩌고 토게여와 따디 딘데 쩌바 쩌송나 양양 셈라 뇽바 차당 나소바 피우고니 시발라 녀와림바 제바오 디 임발라 때니 디시데니 밍라 녀와림바 스밀라바레 소네 제바오
So when we speak about these 4 perpetuations, then each of them is particularly emphasized by a particular group. So they increase the afflictive emotions, attachment and aversion in particular, for specific people, mainly for specific people. So due to the first perpetuation, lay people disagree and perpetuate existence based on intense clinging to desirable things. So the 5 sense pleasures are the causes for strong attachment, for grasping and attachment and desire. And that affects particularly lay people who engage in all sorts of actions in order to acquire the sense pleasures. So thinking this is my land, my place, my things, holding on to that, wanting to acquire more. Based on that, upholding one's things, then the lay people do all sorts of things. They have to engage in business, they engage in farm work and so on. And in the process, there are a lot of instances where, due to the desire for the sense pleasures, then they will have causes for disagreement. And so both desire as well as aversion will flare up for lay people, and that's like the main people affected by the perpetuation of desire. And then the second perpetuation, due to the second, monks disagree and so forth based on clinging to a viewpoint. So the second perpetuation is the perpetuation of unwholesome beliefs. And actually, the perpetuation of beliefs is something where we then speak about the philosophical viewpoints, the different philosophical schools, and really this is where monastics, for example, have a lot of potential to develop attachment and aversion, a lot of agitation, because there are the discussions of whether something is a complete refutation of something, whether this is an implicative negation or an explicit negation, and so on. There are just so many small points of views where someone can think that a particular view, a particular idea is the supreme one, and then get attached to that view, get agitated, develop aversion in the discussion towards others. So there's a lot of potential for afflictive emotions here, particularly for those who engage in these philosophical debates, which is mainly the monastics. And then the third perpetuation is the perpetuation of discipline and ritual. Due to the third, non-Buddhists disagree among themselves based on their conflicting, mistaken disciplines and rituals. So within the non-Buddhist practitioners, the different traditions, there are many different ideas of what constitutes the right discipline or the right kind of rituals for purification, while in reality they are not. But so and within the non-Buddhists, they also fight with each other about which one is the right thing to do. So there are, for example, very extreme disciplines. There are some people who refrain from taking anything that is not given. So according to their view, even if you go to a very remote place where there are no people and there's a waterfall that comes from the mountains, so with glacier water, they say they cannot take that water and drink that water because it has not been given to them. So in their idea, their discipline, like it is correct discipline to take nothing whatsoever, even if it comes from nature, which is from a place that is not owned by anyone. If you would take even the water from a glacier, a waterfall in a remote area without anyone who claims that land, then still, because it's not given, they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't drink that water. That's one view on discipline, or one idea of correct discipline from some people. Then there are some who think that all their negativities will be purified if they light fires in the four directions on a hot, sunny day. So they sit in the middle of fire, and the extreme experience of heat is they think will purify all the negativities. That's another austerity that they think of as supreme. Or some people believe that behaving like an animal, like a dog or a cow, will purify the negativity. So they hold on to that kind of discipline of walking on all four, like on walking like a dog or a cow, would purify the negativities. So there are all these many different kinds of disciplines that people practice, and they also fight with each other. So this is the basis for a lot of debate and quarreling between them. So there are also a lot of negativity, a lot of afflictive emotions can be perpetuated based on those. And then the last one, due to the fourth, non-Buddhists disagree with the doctrine of non-self based on their attachment to the basis for the wrong beliefs. And I believe in the transitory collection. Actually, this perpetuation of the doctrine of self-entity also is a perpetuation, and that can be between non-Buddhists and Buddhists, or even within the different philosophical schools of the Buddhists. Here the basis is the belief of the transitory collections in a self based on the aggregates. And so from a Madhyamaka perspective, for example, there is no self-established at all. And so non-Buddhists would argue with the concept or with the view of non-self that the Buddhists propel. But then even within the Buddhists, there are a lot of debates of what that all entails, this principle of selflessness. And so again, this is the basis that can propel a lot of afflictive emotions, a lot of attachment and aversion. And in this way, these four perpetuate the afflictive emotions and the existence, the further rebirth within samsara.
Yang nyomong ba teso gi mingla dupa shi tinja la pyes napsim 당직 뇌sem당 니 출림도주 초진당 숨 디덴노 셰 초도 진비 ngombar shimbas 디다우당 시스 ngobo 충충yang 소소라 조르나 치마롱 삼바데 납심스 테네 미셴게 디바뽕 개와 룹스네 랑라 디도 람나양 아니 딜라 레라우지네 심 미님 칼라 마니네 데나 디 뇌셈스 네 출림 도시 초선세 다 야강라 단계 출림 도시 초선지 랩상한테 지부지장네 디덴노 셰 초도 진정 공부를 심봤으나 미장와라 장와 미닥발라 딱바라 아니 다메발라 다도 지마 딘데기 삼로 된조데 덴바인 다데 삼로 된조 오늘 딱바레도 스초된조 당공도 대링도 상례도 셈바도로와 딱바레 삼아쳐 탐제되니 데라소바 친지로도 생긴된 좀인가 어디 두바 신네 두바 시인 세다 두바 센나 양디스 시부데 아주 셈라 여송나 양 제가랑도 단다 구바된조 탁바된조 두바 캡샤나 쫄레칼레 하고 용게와 피티난 신가도 디스 셈된조 양 아주 셈라 유디캅라 녀몽바델레 타리아칼레 하고 유스 데레레 타르사 납셈게 두바 세라 데레레 타르라 류기 두바 셰 차르여서 다 두바 스탄다 베자다 제반낭나데 납셈 류기 두바 너셈 류기 두바 출림 turishu 초심 류기 두바 센데르 디레레 시우레레 강라 류기 두바 셰 차르여서 디데 오늘 나도 단다 수기 류지도 안하는 줄라 수부기 류지도 온디글라 두바 잡죠 깨자텐데 마인기 있어 류지 두바 셰 차르와 시부티기 냠바라 샤피 얘기 상신기 류스 오 딜라 아니 바르도 주비 쳇나 디시밍나 류지 두바 세나 얘기 상신기 류기 바르도 주바 얘기 류 생주로 하는 야 셈시네게 강란 네비 류 셈 학동 강란 네비 류 셈 대충 촉색이 강란 네비 류생 어디 류들라 징교레스 두바시 자테스
Then we move on to the four ties. The four ties are covetousness, ill will, holding discipline, and rituals as paramount, and saying this is true, completely grasping something as real and upholding it as supreme. So the four ties are covetousness, number 1, ill will, number 2, holding discipline and rituals as paramount, number 3, and this holding on to something as really being the truth while it's not, so holding a view as paramount. Those are the 4. So the covetousness refers to the attachment of not being able to let go of even small things, like even grasping to being attached to someone else's things, wanting even small things that someone else has and thinking, oh, it's not okay if I do not get that. Then ill will is to not being able to abandon the negativity, the negative thoughts towards others, the harmful thinking that wish to harm others in some way. Holding discipline and ritual as paramount is what we have already seen in the previous section. Again, that same kind of discussion. And then the saying this is true refers to holding view as paramount, which means to really think and hold on to a view to be paramount. So while things are impure, to think that they're pure, to really hold on to things to be permanent while they're impermanent, to hold on to things as being pleasurable while they're in truth suffering, to hold on to existence of a self while there's no self. So those kinds of things that one thinks, oh, this is true, things are truly like that, is the last one here. And all of these four ties, again, are what do tie one to samsara, which means that these are what prevents one from attaining liberation from samsara. These are what prevent one here in the function from which they're that which makes it extremely difficult to gain freedom from the afflictive emotions, the complete set of afflictive emotions and samsara. And so at the end of each of these four should be applied that ties the body. They're called ties because they prevent the mental body from resting in equanimity. So if we look at the full presentation of these four ties, then the full presentation that we find in other texts, then usually we find them spelled out as covetousness that ties the body, ill will that ties the body, holding discipline and rituals as paramount that ties the body, and the grasping something as real and upholding it as supreme that ties the body. So that ties the body here that we have to add to each of the ties does not refer to the tying down of the physical body. The body that is referred to here is the mental body that comes from resting in equanimity. So it refers to the development of this mind, the mental body, in meditative absorption. And so it really refers to a mental body here that is tied by these ropes. It's not the physical body.
Di shi di yue song na, yin wei yu shi si na chung yu yue song re. Di shi di rinpa shin du nap sim rao yu na, sang sin chung se tsam ki yu la tena ni nga zo sim de yin song wa, sang sin la sim yin wa tang. Nu sim si na shen ge da dikwa ma che kewa drup si na lap na, di labyo de la pa tsu zuba zuya rao tang, di pa lawa de minyan ba rao la so ba, di degi kone lepar me jubi yu ni da chang yin wa tang. Ni tsudim tulshu chong sen degi duba de gyab song na, di dungal chakbo nyong wa yung ge ki, di dungal de la yin rubi yu res. Ni di tawa, zang de dakta denzo tawa la chok du zimba chune de na, tsulshi mayin bari she cha la rawa, ani ji lokpar tokpe gyugi sem tenzo. Tene zangwa wo, mi zangwa la zangwa, mi dakwa la dakwar zinne, di dakwa zin song na tene, dunta chi ma tinte lega, chi ma lo la tinte lega, tene maungpa na tinte sene chashe mangpo digwi kone tene yengwa, o tinte sene mangpo chungi yengwa ra che dos, tene yengwe gyu shiya labyo yores.
So these four ties, they constitute particular obstacles to one's practice of the Dharma, virtuous practice, and subsequent freedom from the afflictive emotions or freedom from samsara, because they completely distract one from that virtuous practice. If one is bound by the tie of covetousness that binds the body, then the desire for others' belongings, even if it's something small, really carries away one's mind, doesn't let one rest in meditative absorption, doesn't let one focus the mind because one is so distracted. And so they're also called the four causes of distraction, because one is distracted by one's covetousness from practicing meditative absorption. There are hence four causes of distraction. Covetousness causes distraction based on the slightest material object. Ill will causes distraction based on not having perfectly established one's argument. This actually refers to the distraction that one experiences when if ill will, even though someone else might tell one, don't do these negative things, don't do all this negativity, practice virtue. One is not able to follow that kind of instruction, and therefore is distracted from practicing virtue by one's ill will, by that negativity of that afflictive emotion. And then holding as paramount causes distraction based on the intense application of mistaken discipline or ritual. So if one engages in these mistaken practices, these austerities that inflict a lot of suffering upon one's experience, one's body, for example, and one exposes oneself to so much austerity and difficulty, then the mind is distracted by that suffering, by that physical suffering, and one is not able to, one is distracted from practicing one pointedly. And then grasping as real causes the mind to be distracted based on incorrectly discriminating objects of knowledge. So there again, by mistakenly grasping two things in a wrong way, so holding things that are impure to be pure, holding things that are impermanent as being permanent, then one will actually be distracted by that and make a lot of meaningless plans. So if you think that things are permanent or pure, then one will engage in a lot of planning. Oh, I will do this in the next week. I will accomplish all of this. I will gain all of that, and so one gets distracted by holding this things to be real while they're not. Then one gets distracted by making a lot of plans and so on.
Nyomong ba teso mingla yang chiba na sentinde years deba la tuma dan che nusem dan ni mugni dan sum gojo dan shi techum nas tenzo tene chiba teta ki kongi rimba shindu pena kandis sena deba la tumba sende yona rabdo chungwar debi tu tangsen kimne kimme ba rabdo chungi kaptela ngaranzo deba la dumba singde yona tidu kapla tip chugires deyon sukta tiru rekcha la ani dumba do yiti kapla teni ta rabdo chungwa kimne kimme ba rabdo chung debi kaptela teni tipgires rabdo chungwa la kale khabo chegires kale khabo yungires deyon la yengwinde kala rabdo chung tubiyo mare sumare ani Nösem degi lekpar kulwa tubi tuyudang se lekpar kulwa kaashigi ta tsula tikpa pong kewa tub sene dine lekpar kuldi kapde la ani susugi te tardu laklin de la tubiye la tudu kapla kale yores nösem de yudi kapla nösem sena soso kane tikpa pongni madhuwa kewa tubni tikpa de la kewa tub mathuba tikpa pong mithubi tindegi samlo digi mingla nösem lakidowa anti nösem de yubi kapda la mi shenchi ki nga zola lekpar kuldi kapla tikpa pong kewa tub sen dinde labdi lekpar kulbi kapla anti du tubiye la kale khabu yungi res tipki res tidi kapla ta mukni sing de na shine gi de nga do sem shine kombi kapde la ani sem nangla je tip jowa ni tang mukwa den de kala ni shine yabu kombi kapla digi tipki res sem rabdu zimbi tu se che chöge tsikdang dön den de na radu tene lakdong la ina radu kadu na sem rabdu zimbi kapde la 파 치로라 다 메다 삼로 망보지 코를 줘야 되라 고겨 라기로 어디기 디디 갑라 셈랍도 지미 갈라 아니 집기레스 이제 예랭 차당이단 다위 땅념 첨보 스네 딘델랍디 갈라 다 태숨디 랩디 갑라 되니 치 예랭 차당당 말하면 딘데 인남 마인남 간데 인남 민남 망고 삼로 코르네 팔절 딘데 인기래 팔절 딘데 인기 말에 대로 삼로 망부 콜비고네 태숨지 개위 초라 중투기요 말에스 디디 지바르 집도스 단다두루 목니 신 목바당 니니 카감하죠 지 목니 신 니지 고바당 여바 된조 카카감하죠와 될라 네 자와 충배 직도 제바오세 목바 남나다도 니 남나다도 셈데 낭로라 마지 두바르 제바 셈 낭로라 지 셈 남라 지 몽비 차인 바라 직바레스 아니 이제 고바단 교발람나 셈 치로라 영리 차라 자와 직송이 배라 됐니 디니 된조 아니 목바다 니 직지 고바단 교바스는 냠도 지니 되네 제바 오스
Then another way to classify the disturbing emotions is as the 5 veils. The 5 veils are first the veil of pleasure seeking, second the veil of ill will, third the veil of sluggishness and sleep, fourth the veil of excitement and regret, and fifth the veil of doubt. Taken in succession, they cause one to refrain from virtue at the time of wishing to take ordination, at the time of accomplishing what one has been encouraged to accomplish, at the time of shamatha, at the time of fully taking hold of the mind by vipassana, and at the time of equanimity. So we have these 5 veils here that are enumerated based on what they veil, what they hinder from us from accomplishing. So the veil of pleasure seeking causes one to refrain from actually taking ordination when one wants to take an ordination. So it's the desire for pleasure, for the sense pleasures, that actually prevents one from engaging in that virtuous activity of taking ordination. Then the veil of ill will prevents one from putting into practice the good advice that one might get from someone else, from a teacher, for example. So when one is encouraged by someone else to refrain from negative actions and to engage in virtuous practice, And one is so attached to ill will, to the negative actions. One does not really want to give up the negative action, and one is not really able to practice virtue. That veils one from putting into practice the positive advice, the virtuous advice that one has received from someone else. So it veils one from that. The veil of sluggishness and sleep is then preventing one from practicing virtue in terms of the practice of shamatha, of calm abiding meditation. And here is the inward withdrawal of the mind, the sluggishness and sleepiness that distracts the mind or veils the mind from developing the one-pointed focus of shamatha meditation. And then likewise, the veil of excitement and regret prevents the virtuous practice of vipassana, of apprehending the phenomena correctly. So that then is the distraction through excitement, or being overly excited and having a lot of regret. It's the distraction, or that which veils one from developing the qualities of vipassana. And then doubt, the veil of doubt, is what hinders equanimity. So this equanimity here refers to the great equanimity that is free from all distinction of what is close or distant. And so if we are in doubt about the nature of these things, of whether this great equanimity is what it refers to, and so on, not being sure, so doubting that validity, then one will not be able to rest in the great equanimity, which is the unity of shamatha and vipassana. On the doubt, one does not, or with doubt veils, prevents one from developing this great equanimity. And so here we have grouped together some of the afflictive emotions that we have seen previously separate, right? So sluggishness and sleep are here grouped together, as well as excitement and regret are combined because they have similar functions. So sleep and sluggishness are grouped together as one here because they have the same function of inward withdrawal of the mind, of unclarity of the mind. And excitement and regret both have the aspect of distraction, of outward focus that prevents vipassana to them. And so that's why they're grouped together here into one veil each.
Yang docha shedang timu sumla rangyu chingpes rangyu sena susuki semde chingpe na di sumgi mingla yang chingwa sum shejang chades docha ki chingwa shedang ki chingwa timu ki chingwa she chashins oma namsuang ani deshin charwar chawos tini hok tenzola tini nyomongba tenzo lepson na yang tene tenzola ani chingwa sene charna yang digyo res so ne te kaisina rangyu chingwes 칭와라 됐네. 오만만 좀 대신도 장을 차고.
Moreover, desire, anger, and delusion are also called the three shackles because they shackle down one's stream of being and are thus called the shackle of desire, the shackle of anger, and the shackle of delusion. The following should also be combined with the three poisons in this same way. So another way of referring to the three poisons here, to the three afflictive emotions of desire, anger, and delusion, is that we call them the three shackles because of their function to tie down the mind stream, the mind, the stream of being, which refers here to the mind of sentient beings. And so we can therefore say there is the shackle of desire, the shackle of anger, and the shackle of delusion. And the next passage, whatever we see in the next passage, should be applied in the same way to the three afflictive emotions. Kan jeg ikke kigge sånn, Konda?
공다. 진짜로 참 샤이 노아멜람 냠도 승로는.
So I would like to stop here for today, and please recite with me the dedication and aspiration prayers.
참발 바웨 지달 켐바 당군도 상보 대양 대신 대대다 군 제손 달론 진계와엔 대다 탐제란도 두솜 셴베 잘와 탐제 지모와 간라 초도 나바 대다신 계위 자완 대군 양 상보 주체레라도 노와인제 스남대예 탐제 세바니 톰네 예베 다남 밤제 네제가 나치 발라베 초바이 세베 촐레 조와 조로와 쇼케와 디엔게워 군스남 예시 초조 신스남 예시 레종와 담바 군예 토바 쇼로 추소 조와레 진예 람도 소체 람도 조와 진예 람도 소 람툴로와 셀와레 진예 람도 소 툴로바 예시 소 차로와레 진예 람도 소 젤라자요나
So, Jelajio. So, good to see you all. I'm happy you all made it to class, and the time, some of us appeared early and not late, so that's good. I would like to make a little change with the attendance quizzes. You probably saw it already. I'll just post them all together once a week, just to save some time. And just fill out today's attendance, and don't submit yet, then fill out tomorrow's and so on. And then submit it at the end of the week when you have watched all the classes, watched or attended live. Yes, so, and if you have questions, then that's probably what Loshi was wanted to ask. If you have questions, I will post a recording of the video as soon as Teams has created it, and then post your questions directly below. Indicate if you particularly want to be answered by Lamala post that. I will answer those that I can answer and then ask the rest to Lamala the next day. But just in the recordings channel, below the recording, just post your questions there. So they're all together in one place. And if you don't want your name to be attached to your question, send me a message privately. That's also okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. And everything else we'll discuss. We'll discuss on Wednesday. Yes, Dorota?
What is the attendance questions today?
There is no attendance question, actually. So if you look at the quiz, it says, have you attended? And then the second question is, what's your main takeaway of the class?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, based on that, I should be able to see whether you listened to the class or not. Any other questions? If not, I need to go because with the new timing, I have half an hour until my next class. Miri?
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Okay.